Being delusional is a byproduct of a condition when a person is presented evidence, and with that evidence, the person more or less denies that the evidence exists. This is a woman by the name of what I call Dominic Deborah that more or less asserts or more or less assumes that women never needed men. And see, it's this type of thinking that's caused the chasm and a dysfunction in our communities as it speaks or as it more or less relates to now. This woman believes that men did not play a significant role in their empowerment and the evolution of not only the family and communities, but women by themselves can more or less do things without the advancement of men. Let me say this. I believe succinctly that men and women are better when they work together as a team. And even though this woman, who I call Dominic Deborah, doesn't think so, I think she's missing that the epigenesis or the pillars of society was more or less started and more or less formulated by men. I submit myself that without men, the house that I live in, I would have never had the opportunity to have shelter or even the clothing that's made in the factories that men created. Men and women are the pillars to society, and why men don't necessarily need women for utilization, we do need women for procreation and also affection. We can live without the affection, but we can't live without their procreation because men need women in order to procreate. This is the negative impact of negative thinking that continues to permeate in our community. And because of this permeation, you're seeing a lot of women that actually believes in this nonsense. I did a show called back in the past, What is a Queen Without a Crown? And it appears that this woman, in her own or best estimates, believes that she's a queen. And she's definitely a queen that does not have a crown, because a woman can't be at her best unless she has the covering of her husband. I want you guys to listen to what this woman is saying. And I want you to ask yourself the question, are her sentiments true or are they false? Is she a queen without a crown? Do women not need men? Or is this woman a byproduct of a psychopathology called delusional? You decide. So let's listen to Mrs. Deborah Cooper. And I want you guys to form your own opinion.
Let's talk about that real quick, because it's my stance that women have never needed men. Not from day one have women needed men. What men did, knowing that, was put structures in places they were physically stronger and larger than women. It makes it a little bit more challenging to assert yourself. So women in their frightened state would acquiesce to what men wanted them to do, but it was out of fear and intimidation. It was not out of respect and admiration for how you treated her or power or anything. So, fast forward several generations, millennials, hundreds of generations, whatever. And you have a situation where women have realized what's going on. I mean, you talk about from Victorian England, when women had to wear corsets where they couldn't breathe and would be passing out in order to have a tiny waist, because that's what men said that they wanted. In China, for hundreds of years, women were tortured, because that's what it is, it's torture, by having their feet bound, and allegedly the smaller your foot, the more desirable it was.
Here's a problem with that type of thinking. Women many times are more or less the agents of beauty and body modification. More women than less actually seek to acquiesce to the desires of a man. But a lot of times it's not necessarily the desires of a man that they're more or less modifying their bodies for. It's actually in competition to other women. And so even this woman was correct, which is not, in my opinion, about women being forced to more or less adhere to more or less Victorian style dressing. Those women understood at that time that in order to get the men that they wanted, they had to present themselves a certain way. The problem with the world that we live in now is the onerous, or more or less the negative impact of victimization and or victimhood. And what victimhood does, it does not take accountability for its own behaviors. The women of those times, just like women of now, don't have to get body modification, butt injections, breast augmentations. They don't have to get body modifications as it relates to the face. But those women back then, as women now, know that in order to get the top tier men, sometimes if they choose to, sometimes cosmetic surgery is their best option. Just like men understand, in order to get the top tier women, they must work themselves to death, or more or less have access to resources and more or less land, money, and material wealth. Because the woman's currency is her ability to acquire resources, money, power, and status. Let's finish listening.
So it was really all about some kind of sexual attraction for the men, but the way that they framed it for women was that it made you more beautiful. So they had to make it so that the parents of these girls and the girls would find this more palatable and be more willing to endure this lifetime of agony. And you look at all the ways that women have been treated, burned at the stake and drowned and had spikes put in their mouth if they were deemed to be a gossiper. I mean, all kind of stuff.
And see, that's what happens with modern education, where there's not comprehensive learning. When you look at especially black men in society, black men were the muse of society. And black men and black women actually worked together. They both were muse. But see, women like her more or less minimize the men that have lost their lives building the infrastructure that we have, the men that have lost their lives in the negative impact of war, the men that have lost their lives trying to defend the women that they love. We don't consider the sacrifices of men. Men are actually seen as just tools for the recreation of some, and also for the provision of some. And this kind of thinking is very dangerous, because her thinking is once again a byproduct of delusion, meaning all of her pronouncements, there's evidence to the contrary. Men, I would say, and I submit, perhaps have more or less went through more severe than any person, more or less, especially black men, because black men were the first ones that were brought to America. Black men were often hung and lynched in front of their white overseers. And on top of that, white men as well, as it relates to war, white men died in war. Even though there have been issues with black men and white men as it relates to race relations, I would say that mankind overall have suffered as it relates to the advancement of human beings, but also as it relates to the advancement of civilization. And so when we hear these kind of what I call very fragmented frames of thought, it leads me to wonder, what's wrong with this woman? And what's wrong with this type of pervasive thinking that's so common in our society? I want you to keep listening, because she's not making any sense.
I mean, I could go on and on and on about this, because you study this stuff, and it's just horrific, the things that men have done to women throughout history for no reason other than that they're women. It's like a man could do the exact same thing, like if a man gossips or a man cheats on his wife or anything, those things didn't happen to him. But women, millions of women have disappeared off the face of the earth.
And that's another misnomer. Listen, I know family secrets. I've heard of family secrets where the women knew, two sisters, or the women knew that those men were married. I'm sure some of you all have family members that grandmom or grandmom kept secret, but it's always like granddad cheated on his on grandma. But we don't talk about the women that knew that those men that were married a lot of times, and they cheated with those men. Sometimes it was same brothers, or sometimes same sisters. But there's always men are horrible, men are bad. That type of denigration and that type of what I call projection goes back to, I think, what some of you guys remember. What are little girls made of? Sugar and spice and everything nice. And then it goes back to what it says about men. What are men made of? Puppy dog tails, snails, and all the negative things. And that's what I'm talking about. It's always the negative or the denigration of men in America. Anytime you look at men in society and on TV shows, they're seen as buffoons, stupid. Their wives are smarter. And I think that's not healthy mentally for men. And I think what this woman is saying, she more or less highlights or more or less amplifies that pathology that continues to exist. So I want you guys to keep listening, because I think she's not making any sense. And I think you guys will agree.
Through history, because of men's treatment of them. So when you have a situation where a man at one point can't stand you and is afraid of you, but at the other point knows that he needs you, he's got to adjust in his mind how he's going to keep you under control, because he needs to be in a psychological safe space where he has the upper hand. And I keep saying this. Oh, I mean, I don't even know how many times I can say this. Every single interaction that men have with women is about getting the upper hand. It's about controlling and dominating you. That's all they think about. Every single move.
And that's why I say this woman is demented. That's why I call her demented Deborah. Every relationship is about leverage and power. How many guys have heard the foolishness called happy wife, happy life? Happy wife, happy life is about power and control. It basically posits by saying this: if the man does not acquiesce to the whims and the demands of that woman, he's going to be left out on the goodies, which in essence, a lot of times, is her body. That's what happy wife, happy life is. If the man doesn't acquiesce to the whims of that woman, he's going to be left out to goodies. If the man does not acquiesce to her demands, he's not going to get the affection that he needs. And how many men are in sexless marriages and more or less suffering from the ravages of affection deprivation? And so mentally, that's not healthy for men, because men are at their best when they are honored and respected. They're more productive. And, we always talk about why relationships are faltering, why relationships, men are not inclined to get married. And it's this negative type of thinking, and also the unaccountability by this woman that more or less put men in a predicament where they say, I really don't see the benefits to being married, because often in the marriage, he's the bad guy. So men are saying, why would I get married? Keep listening.
Move they make is about that, from religion to money to voting power to the men jumping up and down and excited about Trump, getting rid of Section 8 and welfare and subsidies for seniors and stuff. They're thinking, well, only women get those things, and so that'll make them have to, quote, need us. So you see what I mean? It's a twisted mentality. They're not thinking about all the children and women and senior old people that can't work, that'll be put out on the street and trying to figure out a way to live. They're not thinking about that. All they're thinking about is, I'm going to feel better, I'm going to be in power, and they're going to need me. So, I'm looking at that, and it's like, dudes need a reality check. Not one woman on this planet needs you, ever. The women do not need you. What you have done is try to change and structure society, and you've used religion, and you've used law.
It's funny that this woman says that, because she's obviously delusional. The headphones that she has on her ears, men created it. The platform that she's using, YouTube, men created it. The electricity that she's using to more or less facilitate her delusions, men created that. And I will say it again, men and women need each other. We might need each other in different contexts, but we tend to flourish as a nation, as a community, when we work together as a team. In order to have what's called soul fusion, or optimization through the power of synchronization, we need men and women working together as a team. But when you have women like demented Deborah, that more or less posits that men are not needed, she continues to stir the pot that's causing the marriage rates to drop. And I found this as an insult, and I'm sure other men do as well, because our ancestors, our grandfathers, our great-great-grandfathers, some died in sugar cane mills, or they died in factories and warehouses with their hands being cut off. They died in war, from the Revolutionary War on up to the last war. And so men create the safe places or the platforms for these women like Deborah, this woman, to more or less spew delusional thinking. But we wonder why men are not interested in modern relationships, or more or less taking it to the next level. Keep listening.
To keep women under control. What do you think all this stuff is about? Not giving women access to birth control and abortion. That's about forcing women to have children for men that they don't want to have. And when you're pregnant, you're more easily controlled, because you're in a state where you can't really defend yourself, and it changes your body so that you can't run as fast, you can't fight as well. You can't defend yourself, so you have to be in a position where you are depending on someone to help you. They want that to be them. Although,
look, have you been trying to put yourself out there socially, like making friends and dating, when it's just not seeming to work out, and you find yourself,
they turn around and abandon you? But that's another story. By having women not be able to get access to legal and safe and clean abortions, getting access to birth control, so then they have to get pregnant. There's a law that I'm going to be talking about here in California now that was signed in last year, where now it's no longer a felony if you screw a man and he has HIV. He doesn't have to tell you anymore. It's no longer a law that that has to happen and that he can be prosecuted if he doesn't. Now it's just considered a misdemeanor. Okay, so all of this is about controlling women and putting you in a position where you think that you need a man. And I'm telling you, y'all better get your minds right, because things are getting ready to change. They've already begun. There has been for the last 20.
To you wise women, if you listen to this woman, you will be just like her, single and alone, because a masculine, productive man is not going to tolerate this foolishness. Do war. When wars start, this will be the same woman that will be looking for men to protect her when the thieves and the barbarians come at her gate and her door. That's why you can't take women like her serious, because it's obvious she's demented and bitter. And I know she doesn't have a man. And, I want the women that are wise and the women that have some type of semblance or knowledge to look beyond this foolishness and nonsense, because women like her are not giving you guys good advice. So keep listening.
Years, a serious war on women. I am not exaggerating this. I did talk about it on my Blog Talk show probably, 10, 11 years ago. And it's this organized hatred of everything female by men, even to the point where men now putting on wigs and getting hormone shots and stuff and claiming that they're women and trying to usurp your authority over what you are by claiming that they are that. So if you guys don't see what's going on here, that's fine, because will plan to do some more videos about it. But seeing her comment and this guy being very abusive emotionally to her because he feels like, you don't need a man, you got everything that you wanted while you were single. So can any woman. And it would be really great if the younger women got an understanding of what's going on here and stopped having all these damn babies. We're going to be doing a chat about that next week. I have a group of women, a team of women, and we're going to be talking about the long-term repercussions of that socially, physically, mentally, emotionally, and financially on young Black women, and one of the contributing reasons why Black women are at the bottom economically in this country. Also the ones with the most, babies by miscellaneous stray knickknacks. So, something's got to change here, ladies. We really got to change. But this mentality that you need a man.
And once again, the victim mentality. Unless a woman is raped or more or less abused by a foolish man or more or less reckless man, which, I don't condone, women choose who they have sex with, unless they're raped and more or less unless, they were forced to some degree. But when a woman talks like her, she's taking all the accountability from the woman and she's putting it back on the man again. And that's the old trope that we continue to have. And so how can we have a vibrant community? How can we have any semblance of the past? And it's sad. And, our women listen to this type of propaganda. And a lot of our women really want love and romance and good men, but they're left alone. They're left alone because of the indoctrination of angry women like this woman that you're listening to.
That you have to have a man. That's what they want you to think, so that you will freeze in position. You won't want to accomplish things on your own. You won't want to buy your own home. You won't want to travel by yourself to see the world. You and your girlfriends get together and enjoy your lives without them. They don't want you to do that. They don't want you to be happy without them. So they're trying to figure out different ways to make you think that your life is incomplete and that you as a person have no value unless you align yourself with a man. So it's a mental game. It's a mind fuck, as they say. And I cannot stress this enough. We have got to do something. The older women have got to do something to help these younger ones get their minds right and their self-esteem, more intact, because the low self-esteem is at the core of them making the choices that they make that do nothing but damage them further. They're making a poor choice because they don't feel powerful enough and worthy enough to do the other thing that would be in their own best interest. You see what I mean? So they get stuck in this hamster wheel of doing for other people and thinking about other people and pleasing other people instead of themselves, and putting themselves down and letting other people put them down. And it's like this endless cycle of emotional pain and abuse, which keeps them trapped in making decisions that hurt them, so that they stay on this track instead of getting off. I don't know. This is just really, it's something triggered in me when I read that this morning. And I'm thinking, man, these dudes, I mean, they just be running the majorest game and have been on women since the beginning of time. And you guys have got to stop letting them get in your head and control you like this. This just makes no sense to me. This is 2018. So women have got to start thinking differently about who they are and what power you have, where you can go, what you can do, who you can be. None of that is dependent upon a man. And if he tries to stop you from doing it, get rid of his ass. Get rid of him. And don't let him stop you. And that, they're going to feel very threatened by the fact that you make it clear that you don't need them. So be prepared for that. But, the harsh words, possibly even more, domestic violence cases and all this kind of stuff. But if you stay in
and see, that's another lie. You can tell this woman's jilted. You can tell this woman is bitter and angry. It goes back to the false assumption that men are the abusers often in relationships. And the research says to the contrary. Harvard did a research study back in the past and said that many of the domestic violence issues that occur in relationships are actually initiated by women. Domestic violence is not what I call lateral. It's bilateral, meaning it goes in various directions, or it's bidirectional. And because of that bidirectionality, both parties should be held to some level of contempt if they're abusing one another. Many times men don't talk about domestic violence because it's seen as shameful, because men are bigger. So there are men that are getting their heads split, their faces punched in, stabbed, they're getting verbally abused, but they don't talk about it. And so that's the ongoing victim culture that we normally deal with. Same times when it comes down to young boys, I'm being molested by older women. We don't talk about it. And so if we're going to talk about victimhood, we need to talk about the victimhood of women that are more or less offended, but also men and also of boys.
A situation where you're not manifesting your greatness because you want to please a man, then you will die. And you will be like, you will never have left your mark on the world. You will never have really actualized the person that you could have been, the person that you dreamed of when you were a little girl. You've got to stop letting men control you. You got to stop letting men tell you that you're nothing without them. And you have got to stop thinking that you need to slow your roll in order to be appealing to men. Don't worry about them. Make them come up to your level. You don't go down to theirs. So, if you too good, you got too much going on, your stuff is so tight that he feels intimidated that like you don't need him. That means you don't. That means he's not worthy. Okay. He's not the one. So you guys, we'll be talking about this some more. Like I said, I'm going to put the promo together for the discussion I want to do next week. It will be a live thing, and all of you are invited to participate. If you got your web camera, you can participate in the chat. Otherwise, you can ask your questions in the room. The typical webinar type thing that I do. And but I'll be posting some information about how you can participate in it within the next day or two. All right. I know this is kind of a rambling video because I'm in a hurry. I got to get out of here. But I did want to address this and get you thinking about it, and we can talk about it some more in the comments. Deb Cooper, survivingdating.com. I'll see you guys later.
All right. So enough of that foolishness, because that's what it is foolishness. I understand that some people don't believe in the tenets of theology, so I'm not here to push theology. But there's an old saying that says that one can send 1,000 to flight, but two can send 10,000 to flight. And basically what that message more or less states, or more or less affirms, is that when people are unified, more can get accomplished. You know, you look at our communities now, you look at the American community, and many kids and many boys are struggling because they don't have a masculine presence in their home. And some of you young men that are listening to me now, you know the pain of not having a father in the home. I never experienced that because my mom and dad are still married. My parents have been married for over 50 years. But some of you don't know what it's like to have a father in the home. And some of you young girls don't know what it's like to have the love and the protection from your dad. It's hurt, bitter women like this woman that's causing the pathology that I talked about earlier in this show. So I want you to ask yourself the question, is this demented woman and the sentiments that she's saying, is it true? Or is it more or less a fabrication that's more or less permeating inside of her head? And remember this, if it ain't 7, it ain't kosher. If it ain't kosher, it ain't right. I want to thank the audience for taking the time to listen to this show on this day. And I want you to please like, share, and subscribe as I seek to climb to 1,000 subscribers by the end of May. So to all my young men and all my young women that are more or less part of this movement that I'm trying to start, please share this video with 20 people and tell that 20 people to like, share, and subscribe. And once again, thank you. And I appreciate your time and your consideration for my request. Be well. Your fate is before you. Choose wisely.